The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people are evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, a group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
Aloha everyone. Welcome to another installment of our After Dark in the Park coverage at the Volcanoes National Park, Hawaii Island. We are now going to be going through the year on the edge with the National Park Service and the USGS. Welcome everyone. I am Dane DuPont from Hawaii Tracker. We will be joined again by two pineapples, Lou and Anna. They are up on location with Philip Ong. The speech was originally slated to begin at 3 p.m., which would be 4 minutes now, but there is a delay, so get to hang out with me for a little while. We'll let everybody get in here into the chats, and good to see everybody again. We will be trying to cover this event that's going to be taking place on the Caldera rim, well, not on the rim itself, but close enough to go through this last year of eruptive activity inside Halemaʻumaʻu. Now, somebody may wonder, why is it called After Dark in the Park and it's taken place at 3 p.m.? Well, that's when basically the eruption started, at 3:21 p.m. on the 29th, 1 year ago. The eruption resumed in Halemaʻumaʻu. Now, we had a 4-month break before that, and we had that December 2020 eruption leading into that whole thing. So we have a time lapse that I can show you here to show up a little bit of time, right? Switch to that. So yeah, this is a pretty cool little time lapse made up. This is the first time it's being shown to. It goes through the last 2 years of eruptive activity, starting at the water lake, the end stages of the water lake that had come in as the caldera had sunk so far in the 2018 collapse events that it went beneath the water table, and water then intruded eventually. So we had this fresh water lake, and here we'll go through it. This time lapse tries to take a photo from each day at the golden hour, but also we go into the morning as well, just trying to grab some really cool looking frames each day to show this whole progression of the eruption. We are still waiting for 2 pineapples and everybody to at the national park to get set up and get up ready to go. We will be going to them. All right, so here's that break, and then 4 months later, boom, eruption begins. Let's see how much volume has been added. The rise of the lake. And if you are having any issues in chat, please let me know, with sound or video. And we're still going. This eruption's still ongoing, right? Had some points where it looked like it might turn off, but been going strong. All right. Thank you, chat. Yeah, this is a really cool little time lapse. I just get stuck in it. It's cool making it. So many events that took place in here. Let's just get this last little section, or the last 4 months of run again. Where are we? Should be right here. You can see how it started out strong. Then we got into some periods where it started to pause. It looked like it might even. Eruption might come to an end. You can see those days where it just disappears entirely. And then it came on and stayed on. All right. So let's, we do have new updates on Kilauea Mauna Loa. This is our normal day that we do our updates. Philip Ong is on location up with 2 pineapples, so we're not going to be able to do our normal update today. Not a whole lot going on, in short. So it's a good day to be doing all this. We'll go through the USGS updates while we kill a little bit of time, waiting for the beginning of the After Dark in the Dark program, year of the eruption in review. All right, so activity summary. The summit eruption of Kilauea volcano within Halemaʻumaʻu crater continued for the past 24 hours. All eruptive activity, I mean, that's standard. Observations, the western vent into air floor continued over the past 24 hours. Active part of the lava lake has stayed steady over the past 24 hours. It stayed steady for a pretty long time. Overflight measurements, okay, here we go, indicated the crater floor had seen a total rise of 143 meters, and 111 cubic meters of lava has been infused since the beginning of the eruption, so we get an update on that. Yeah, big eruption, completely confined to Halemaʻumaʻu crater, which makes it primarily a safe eruption. The main thing that people are going to be impacted by is the SO2, which is mentioned here. But what was it, 970? It's been around that average for a while now. So we're just going to look at the updates right now, where we hopefully get Philip Ong and everybody on the 2 pineapple stream set up. Let's take a look at the Mauna Loa, because Mauna Loa has been getting some questions since that flurry of earthquake activity last week. A small seismic swarm is ongoing beneath the summit of Mauna Loa volcano. It's 2 a.m. on the 23rd. The USGS HVO has recorded over 38 earthquakes beneath the summit of the region, with most earthquakes in a cluster about 3.1 miles wide and negative 1.6 to 1.6 below the surface. So that means sea level, right? So 0.6 below the sea level, and then 1.2 miles above sea level. These earthquakes may result from changes in the magmatic storage system, or may be part of the normal readjustments of the volcano due to changing stress within it. HVO continues to monitor the Hawaiian volcanoes for any changes. Yep, we got a statement from Ken Hahn, scientist in charge of USGS HVO. Seismic activity beneath Mauna Loa has been gradually increasing over the past 2 months. Small earthquake swarms are considered a normal part of this increase in activity. Currently, there are no indications that magma is moving towards the surface or other monitoring systems are displaying normal behavior. Levels of seismicity and deformation remain below those recorded during the winter of 2021. That's when we had another seismic swarm upon Mauna Loa, slightly bigger than this one. HVO will continue to monitor closely this activity and reporting significant changes. So they're monitoring it. It definitely wasn't there's certain times when prior to the 2020 eruption of Kilauea, we were talking about how there was an intrusion of magma, and that was like a failed eruption. There's no indication this is anything like that, just another normal flurry. Mauna Loa is good at throwing pump fakes out there. Always has been, since I've been around, at least. For my time, can't speak about it really, other than, the histories, but let's check to see if they are still getting ready, it looks like. That's cool. I mean, we can take a look at the tool time lapse. I don't have that much. I didn't expect a 10-minute delay. So this time lapse, though, I mean, it's really crazy how fast the geologic time moves in Hawaii. Right? Everywhere else, you can, significant changes are going to be seen over multiple generations, even, centuries, going thousands and thousands of years, right? In Hawaii, though, it's like in fast forward, where we go from legendary 2018 eruption, where cubic kilometer plus of magma is erupted into a water lake at the summit Caldera, which had a lava lake in it since 2007, and then to turn that back into a lava lake and then regain a lot of the ground that was collapsed in 2018. We're coming up to the level where it'd be, if you came upon it now, you wouldn't really know about how deep that hole really was. We get this steady activity, these breakouts as this whole thing raises. Every time it raises a little bit, it makes a new stress fracture, and lava is able to get out. And we see the result of that. It's really interesting how this top layer has been able to basically rise with the lava instead of being just drowned completely. We've seen this whole area raise significantly. That one island in the very beginning of the eruption, we can see 2020, we can see this island form, shift around, and eventually find its place. And that thing is going to end up being a dominant feature all the way through the current part of the eruption. It's not very visible now. It's been submerged by overflows and things along those lines, but you can see how it's still there, still dominant. We get into this eruption and it continues. I mean, look, you can see it raising up with that lava level. Is there magma in the earthquake layer zone or just rocks? Earthquake layer zone. This question probably better for Philip, really. But there's earthquakes that can result from magma pressurization, and then there's earthquakes that create areas, voids, new areas for lava to intrude through. So you can get a chicken and the egg type situation in some regards, but really it's the magma driving a lot of action underground in terms of the earthquake activity. And on Mauna Loa, Mauna Loa is different, interesting. They think that's down near where basically the magma would be. Some of it's a little shallower, but it would be down basically sea level-ish. Let's see what we got. Are we ready? Stock starting now. Let's do it.
Still?
Yep.
Looks like we got a little bit of lag here. We can see him there. Maybe refresh this. Maybe it's on our end. Maybe. Strange things happen when you're streaming.
Events stretching almost 3 months, it would drop by about a meter at a time. And that leaves us with the larger pit that we see here today, including these large fault scarps here on the eastern side of the crater. So what you see there, what we call the downdrop block with the 1982 fissures on it, that used to be at the same level as the rest of the caldera floor over here, but it gradually slid down over the course of those 3 months. The 2018 eruption concluded on August 5th of that year. The earthquakes in the summit area that were associated with those collapse events, they just kind of died off. The eruption slowed dramatically on the East Rift Zone. Little drebs of lava still came out over the course of the next month, but the main effusion phase ended on August 5th. And then Kilauea was quiet thereafter. We were all speculating about when lava might return. The most recent example of an eruption similar to 2018 in 1924 saw some crater filling eruptions in the years thereafter for about a decade or so. And so we thought
Sorry guys, that is not on your end. We don't have the best solid coverage right now. Hopefully it'll be back here in a second. So this is Mike Zauler from USGS, and I believe Ben Hayes from National Park Service. Yep, again, this is not on your guys' end. Thank you for sticking with us. Try refresh.
And then Kilauea was quiet thereafter. We were all speculating about when lava might return. The most recent example of an eruption similar to 2018 in 1924 saw some crater filling eruptions in the years thereafter for about a decade or so. And so we thought overlying the magma chamber down there a kilometer below, when the magma tries to come up again, is it going to explosively interact with that water? Well, we learned what was going to happen on December 20th of 2020, when eruptive fissures broke out in the wall of Halemaʻumaʻu crater after a brief period of seismicity in the summit and on the upper East Rift Zone. But there was no explosive eruption. Lava poured down from those fissures into the bottom of the crater, and it boiled off the 50-meter deep water lake in about 45 minutes. So a volume of water about the size of Aloha Stadium gone in 45 minutes. And so that eruption, as I said, started December 20th of 2020. It slowed down after the first few days, but it continued into May of that year. And in late May of 2021, we saw the last evidence of lava activity at the surface, and again, the summit region went quiet. Not a lot of earthquakes. No, was in late August of 2021 when there was a seismic swarm both below the summit and into the upper southwest rift zone, an area that has not erupted since 1974. And coincidentally, the earthquakes were very close to the region of the 1974 vent, right behind us here in the South Caldera region. And there was a lot of speculation that we might see an eruption of that kind once again. But it didn't pan out. The earthquake activity slowed down, and for the next month, Kilauea was quiet once again until September 29th of last year, and that's where I'm going to hand it over to Ho'ola'i at this time.
Yeah, so in Olelo, Hawaii, we have a term called a mo'olelo. Can you guys say mo'olelo? Mo'olelo. Oh, that's pretty good. So a mo'olelo olalo means a story, right? And our stories are accounts of our experience as humans, our cultural experience that we get from our ecosystems and our environments, but also um, natural phenomena that happen. So I'm gonna share a story with you guys. Perhaps you guys have heard it. I'll go into why this kind of pertains to an eruption, but eruptions let us know that Pele Honua Mea, is still home, right? And Pele isn't just a destructive force, as a lot of people tend to think lava and eruptions to be, but that Pele is also a creative force, and there's this process known as a huli hia. Can you guys say huli? Huli hia. There you go, and that means a catastrophic change or a dramatic change over time. So long ago, in the place called Kahiki, there was a little girl named Namaka, right? Or that's her shortened name. We'll keep it nice and easy. Namaka and her parents had a baby. So by a show of hands, how many of you have siblings? Does she have a little sibling? Not yet. Okay. Right. So how many of you are the eldest? Yeah. How many of you are the youngest? Okay, so you guys are really going to shine in this story. Really we'll see this relationship happen. But Namaka's parents end up having another child, right? That child's name was Pele Honua Mea. You guys say Pele? Pele. Honua? Honua. Mea. Right? But we call her Pele for short. So she's born, and Namaka, being the older sister, is recognizing all this love and attention and affection going to this new baby. And Namaka's like, I don't think she's that cool. Where's my love? Little did she understand, new baby needs a lot of care. So, as Pele gets older, we start to learn that she has the ability to control fire, right? Eruptions. And she learns from her uncle and is gifted certain tools to help her harness that power. Well, one day, Pele was up on a nice hill, right? Let's just imagine Mauna Loa being the place, right behind her. And she notices every time she jams this digging stick into the ground, more lava comes out, right? A stronger eruption happens. So, she's kind of being a little bit of a scientist here, and she figures, I'm going to jam it really hard into the ground. Right? So she jams it into the ground, and out erupts this huge. And as it's going down, it accidentally burned down her older sister, Namaka's home. Right? So how's that for islands, right? And they start off in the area that's now known as Papahanaumokuakea, right? The Hawaiian National, or the Marine National Monument, right? In the western Hawaiian Islands, and slowly starts working her way down, right? Namaka comes home to see her house in ashes, completely taken by the lava. And she immediately realizes, oh, Pele. So she goes and hunts her sister down. Right? So the first of their battles begins on the island of Ni'ihau, right? And they get up to Ni'ihau, and they have this battle. Pele realizes, like, I can't take Namaka, so she jumps to Kauai, right? And Namaka follows Pele to Kauai and continues to follow her sister throughout the island chain until they reach Maui, right? Does everybody know where Maui is? Okay, yeah, it's the one with the nice beaches and the big, what do you call it? The humpback whales breaching, right? All the calendars. I digress. So, she reaches Maui, and at this point in her training, she's like, you know what? I can take my older sister. I'm done running. So they have this huge battle, right, in what's believed to be the district of Hana. And they had this huge battle that shook the world and caused new land to come up, where Pele actually dies, right, or dies. And she, her wailua, her spirit, her uhane, leaps up into the sky and takes the form of, I don't know if you look around, but you see this kind of haziness to our left over here. So that haziness is one of the forms that she can take, right? So she took this form and she traveled over from Maui here to Halemaʻumaʻu, where she slowly started getting stronger and stronger and became the Pele we know today, right? This force of creation and destruction all wrapped in one. And that the stories, right, that this story teaches us that sometimes we have to go through pauses. We have to go through moments that are just really hard, or even moments that are just kills you inside, right? To become a better, stronger version of who you are and who you're meant to be. That's the story of Pele Onuamea coming here, and that's what I kind of felt would be a good thing to share with you guys. And so, mahalo. I'll turn it back over to
So it's 3:18 right now. We're coming up close on the eruption start time, which is about 3:21 last year. Now, the Hawaiian Volcanoes Observatory's first indication that something might happen up here at the summit was a bunch of earthquakes that started firing off below the summit, and again in the Upper East Rift Zone. That seems to be a common area for earthquakes when the summit is going to erupt again. Shortly thereafter, the tilt meter that we have just over here behind the old Hawaiian Volcano Observatory building started to show that the summit was tipping, and that was because it was inflating with new magma coming close to the surface. At the same time, a team of Hawaiian Volcano Observatory geologists was over near Kapapala Ranch at a place called Ohaikea, which is a famous ash deposit where they were studying old layers from explosive eruptions here at the summit. And one of the seismologists called them like, hey, you guys might want to go back over to the crater. Something's fishy over there. They started coming back down from the ranch. When they were at the gate, they looked over and saw a huge cloud billowing out of the crater. And they got in the car and raced over here so that they could go down and take a look at the lava lake. I was unfortunately back at my desk. I did not get to see the fun that day. But I got a call from one of those geologists like, hey, go look at the webcam. And sure enough, we looked down at the old crater floor that was remaining from the December to May eruption. And new fissures were cutting through the middle of it and along the sides in very similar positions to the vents that had fed the first eruption. So it suggested that magma traveled to the surface in a very similar path as it did before. Oh, so there we go, 3:21, right on time.
So what does it sound like when it erupts?
Well, it actually sounds very, very loud because there's enormous amounts of gas rushing out. Some people will liken it to a jet engine. But since I was not here, I'm going to actually pass it back to Hawaii briefly so he can describe what he saw from over the other side of the crater that day.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to hear it, right? But if we look to my right, you guys see that red building? Right, so that's Volcano House. So we're going to use our handy dandy Hawaiian measurements. I want you guys to raise a thumb, right? Thumbs up. I want you to put the length of your thumb to the right of Volcano House. Right? So right where your thumb tip is kind of a ballpark area of where our education center is. That's where I was working and stationed at that time. And over there, I was sitting at my desk, and where I was working, there's this nice big window, right? Beautiful window looking out at the forest around us. And within our stories, there's this phenomena that happens during eruptions, and that's called kanehoalani, right? And it's a particular kind of sun. And maybe Mike can jump or elaborate into why this happens. But when eruptions begin, the sun will glow a almost scarlet red in color. So I'm over there at my desk, and I have all the light, right? This is later in the day. And the sun comes in, and it's just red. All where the light is touching is just red. I was like, huh, oh, that's weird. And then my lovely supervisor, Kekoa, he was actually at home. And he told us that if there was an eruption, he would blast the group chat, and he would come racing from his house here because he wanted to view it and be a part of it. So that's exactly what happened. My phone started pinging that there was an eruption that had begun. So from the Ed Center, right where we are, if you look a little bit more, there's kind of that clear face on the cliff. That's known as Kupina'i Pali. That's one of the overlooks that you can go to view the eruption now. But I ran over there with some of my co-workers, and we're looking, and there we could see the very tips of the lava fountains that Mike had mentioned, but you just see this huge plume of smoke, all while there's this red, scarlet red light coming from the sun over everything. It was really spectacular.
What Hawaii is describing is the sulfur dioxide that is associated with the breakout of new eruptions. And there's still some sulfur dioxide coming out here, but at the beginning of a new eruption, there's often a lot of it. And that's because that sulfur dioxide has been accumulating at the top of the magma chamber when the volcano wasn't erupting. And so when it finally breaks through and makes its way to the surface again, a lot of that gas rushes out. And it creates that red color on the sun because light diffuses slightly differently through sulfur dioxide gases compared to what it would through water vapor in a cloud or something like that. So that all that gas rushing out was also propelling enormous amounts of lava out. And that's why we saw such high lava fountains at the very beginning of the eruption. The eruption rates were about 100 cubic meters per second or more of lava coming out for the first several hours of the eruption. But it eventually tailed off as that gas was expended. The propellant force was dwindling, and eventually, over time, the eruption has settled into a lower effusion rate of about 2 to 4 cubic meters per second. So that's probably about the size of the Trig monument here. So you can imagine an amount of volume about that size coming out every second down there. As the eruption started, it filled the whole crater floor with fresh lava. It's completely molten. But an interesting thing happened over the course of the next couple days. There were these islands remaining on the crater floor from the very beginning of the first eruption that started in December of 2020. Those islands are remnant pieces of when the lava was interacting with the water lake down there. It's what we call hyaloclastite. It's a slightly less dense material that's produced by low-level explosive interactions between lava and the small water lake. And those islands are remnants of that. And we thought when the new eruption started last September, oh, they're going to get buried. We're never going to see them again. But to our surprise, within a few days, they floated back to the surface. And that's because they're less dense than the new lava that was getting erupted. And eventually, the buoyancy brought them to the surface. And we can still see them out there today. We can't see the biggest one, but you can see a couple of the smaller versions of those islands out here on the eastern side of the crater floor. As I said, initially the whole crater floor was molten except for those islands, but eventually it started to crust in from the edges. There just wasn't enough lava coming out to sustain that molten churning across the entire crater floor. So over the course of months, the crater floor is crusted up, and now there's only about a 3 acre in size lava lake that's still active lava down there. And unfortunately we can't see it from this angle, but Keanakakoi and Kupina'i Pali can see it quite well because it's over on the west side of the crater floor. Now, the eruption hasn't been continuous since September. We went through a period in the springtime where there were some pauses, where whatever reason that we're still trying to figure out as scientists, we can't fully explain it. The eruption would just stop for a couple of days at a time and then renew. It didn't cause the lava lake to drop in any dramatic way. It would drain out from that active footprint, but it would just leave its walls, and there would be like a flat floor where the lava had once sat. But we haven't seen one of those pauses in quite a long time until last Tuesday, when there was another seismic swarm under the summit, and the entirety of the crater floor dropped by about 10 meters in just a few minutes last Tuesday evening. What we think might have happened there is that a sill was formed deeper below the lava lake and below the old crater floor, where lava was injected between layers that formed the subsurface of the caldera out here, and it took some lava out of the lava lake and forced it down below, and that's why we saw the surface drop. But since then, it has continued fairly steadily once again, and we see the slow rise that we had been seeing for most of the past year. The crater floor, as you see right now, we can't see all of it, but it's about 300 acres in size, continues to grow. Within several months, we think it's probably going to start overflowing onto the eastern downdrop block as it gets even higher. As to how long it will last, nobody's really sure. Pele's going to do what Pele's going to do. And I think we're both happy to take any questions that you folks might have, but at least in terms of the prepared remarks, I think that was all I was going to say. Do you have anything else?
Nope.
Yeah.
That was everything I got.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming.
So how do the Hawaiians explain why the eruption stopped? Do they have an explanation?
Growing up, that's actually a funny question. Growing up, my tutu would say that Pele is just resting. Man, that she's busy. She got to take a little power nap, comes back and continues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Years ago, we came and there was fog for several years, really bad. Why has it gone away?
So there is still some volcanic gas coming out, but it's not at the amounts that you used to see. The highest amounts we ever saw were during the 2018 eruption, when there were 100,000 tons per day coming out from the Lower East Rift Zone. Right now, it's putting out about 2,000 to 3,000 tons per day, and the old lava lake period from 2008 to 2018 would see about 5,000 tons per day. So we're a little bit less than both of those thresholds, and I think that's why the VOG has not been quite as much of a nuisance in recent times as people remember.
The white smoke that's coming out, that's some sulfur, some steam, what else is it?
Sulfur, steam, hydrogen sulfide. A lot of the times when you think you're smelling sulfur, it's actually, it's not the sulfur dioxide, it's the hydrogen sulfide, which is detectable by the human nose at lower concentrations than sulfur dioxide, and you're smelling it at much lower amounts than would actually be dangerous of hydrogen sulfide. So I'm guessing that's probably most of what we're seeing from the eastern side of the crater floor. But over there on the west side, a lot of that is probably the actual sulfur dioxide, and that's of course why the southwestern side of the crater is closed to the public.
So what's the air quality impact, and what do they do to mitigate it on the island? Is there any?
Well, we can't exactly put a plug in the top of the volcano, unfortunately.
Right, but so they don't take any steps to...
Well, the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory has a pretty robust gas monitoring system. We have a number of stations out there in the Kau Desert telling us what the concentrations coming out are. And there's some further field stations run by the park and other agencies out in Pahala and Ocean View. And if concentrations were ever to reach like dangerous levels in those areas, there are recommendations to evacuate. Fortunately, that it hasn't reached those levels in a very, very long time. But it's possible that if a really large amount of gas was coming out, that could happen, and we would relay the message around that, hey, people, especially people with respiratory problems, should maybe reconsider going outside or staying in those areas at those times.
So this is a really in the weeds question that you may not know, but do the feds set NAC for anything that's coming out of this?
Wait, repeat that again. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Does EPA set national ambient air quality standards for anything that's coming out of this? Like, I think they have a sulfur.
I think they do, but because it's a natural source, there's not much we can do about it. Because it's not like a power plant. They can actually take recourse against a power plant to hey, settle down your emissions. But
does it affect the state? Well, anyway, never mind.
Yeah. Maybe Jessica has a good answer to that.
I just wanted to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
The closer you are to the source, the higher the concentration.
Yep.
Hence the reason why this whole part has been closed actually since 2008 when lava returned to Halemaʻumaʻu. And we have air quality monitors that you can look at online on the Park Service website to tell you what air quality we're in right now.
The only reason I'm asking is because I work in air quality, so
probably
like no one else cares.
No, we care.
No, I know. I just mean, you know.
Yeah, the closure area extends to about the Mauna Iki Trail, which is like halfway down the southwest rift zone, and there's a reason why it extends to there, because by the time the gas plume gets out there, it's dispersed enough that the concentrations in any given spot are not really high enough to be dangerous.
So within our disaster recovery plan, it does outline some of that. Currently, we are in the process of just seeing if it's safe enough for us to go in and fix it, or even just to dismantle it. The main goal with the plan, however, is to dismantle the building and actually return it to as close of a state as possible for us to enjoy. Being that that particular area known as Uēkahuna is a very special place to Kanaka Maoli, and we want to respect that and try to return it back.
Who services the webcam? Huh? Who services the webcam y'all were talking about?
That's us. There's a couple of them in the tower, the old tower on the building, but depending on what happens with the building, they may get moved to the radio tower or placed at lower levels here out here on the crater rim. And there's a couple other ones scattered around out here, but the main ones are up there.
Do you have any predictions, like with the other earthquakes around the Pacific Rim, when this one will go off again? Do you predict that at all?
There's not a lot of interaction between our volcano and the other stuff around the Ring of Fire because we're so well in the middle of the Pacific Plate. We're not really affected by the processes around the edges, which are all subduction zone volcanoes and subduction zone related earthquakes, whereas the processes here are a little bit different. It's called intraplate volcanism rather than interplate volcanism.
Okay.
And that includes Mauna Loa?
Yep. It's kind of now. There may or may not be some interaction between Kilauea and Mauna Loa. There's some thought that maybe the magma reservoirs pressurize against each other at times. They don't share magma, but sometimes like the pressure on one might affect what's going on with the other. But in terms of interactions with other volcanoes further away in the Pacific Basin, not so much.
This is a dumb question, but what's the difference between a geologist and a volcanologist?
A volcanologist is just a specialized geologist.
So are you a volcanologist?
I mean, I use both interchangeably.
Oh, okay.
About a week ago, we read about increased activity on Mauna Loa. Is that continued?
The earthquakes are, it has been going through a little bit of a swarm recently, but it hasn't reached levels that would merit raising the alert level. We're still at the yellow or advisory alert level for Mauna Loa, and it's not showing much of the other geophysical signals that we would expect if it was waking up in the near term. For example, the tilt meters are pretty steady, and the GPS instruments up there are also pretty steady at this time. Yep.
Has anybody reported finding Kilauea from this eruption on anything overlooked?
Possibly, I don't know. Yeah.
What is the hair?
Flats.
Thank you. I don't see any of it right now. Yeah.
How high has the crater floor risen in the last year?
I think it's 143 meters higher than it was. I think. Yeah. I apologize that I'm doing all the units in metric. That's science. I'm sorry for that. I know that the crater floor after May of last year had an elevation of 743 meters, and I think it's at like 886 or something now. So I think it's 143. And that edge that you see there, where it's going to start overflowing more to the east, that's at about 900. Just for your reference.
So the recent eruption in Tonga, I think, that's a different type of volcano than Kilauea is, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's where the plates are actually.
Yes.
That's what causes the explosive eruption.
Yeah, and when it's a subduction zone related volcano, that's the reason why there's a volcano there is because there's one plate of the ocean descending under another. It melts in the mantle, and then that magma migrates to the surface and erupts through one of the other plates. And when you're melting one plate, you tend to get more silicic lava than you do here at Kilauea. So it has more silica in it, and that makes it stickier and more viscous. It then traps more gas, and when it explodes, it's much more dramatic. The basalt we have here is fairly low in silica, and that's why the gas is able to get out more easily. Now, that's why we have a lot of sulfur coming out, but it's also why we don't have the really dramatic explosive eruptions that you see at some stratovolcanoes, for example. That's a great question. Yeah.
So does that mean this isn't like making the island bigger because it's not protection?
Well, it can make the island bigger if lava is flowing into the ocean. It's not right now.
Okay.
You know, it's all the lava activity is contained here in the summit crater. But as recently as 2018, we put on 900 acres to the side of the island from that eruption.
So, if I understand, the main active then is about what, 3 acres or so?
The active lava lake, yeah, about 3 acres, yeah.
How thick is the crust? Like, because not the whole lava lake is, it's all solidified most of it.
Yeah, like the stuff we're seeing out here, you mean? That's a great question, and there's not really any way to know for sure, but just an estimate based on the fact that I've flown the USGS drone down there to look at it up close. There's very deep cracks in the surface. That would suggest that it's at least 10 meters or 30 feet or more down to the active lava. That's just a ballpark estimate. Yeah, yeah. It's not like a thin layer where it's like a few inches under there. It's definitely more than that. Yeah.
How close can physically people get there, like you guys?
I'll leave that to the Park Service.
Yeah.
Oh,
How
you
close,
mean
yeah, like
us?
geologists. Yeah, how close do you guys get?
Well, most of our activity is up on the crater rim you see on the south and west sides. Occasionally we will helicopter on the eastern down-drop block because there's a couple of instruments down there that we service. Yeah, sorry, I thought you were asking.
So you can't helicopter directly to the just like cover of the I don't know.
It's not advisable because when there's a lot of heat coming off of the lake, it means that the air is less dense and the helicopter has less lift.
Oh,
so and that's
bad.
for the same reason I also when I fly the drone for official purposes, I don't fly it directly over the lava. I always stay off to the side because if you fly directly over, the heat could cause it to crash and to melt if you're close. Yeah.
That'd be a way to go though.
Yep.
So last year, when we watched the eruptions, it was kind of one home being built, and oftentimes it would collapse down, and then we would like an open cauldron, and we would see it boiling out. And now at night, I see what looks like maybe 2 cones, but like just you see the glow at the top. And I'm wondering, are there 2, and if so, how big are they?
It varies. Like I probably go down there to the crater rim like a couple times a month, and it seems like it's different every time I go down there. There's 1, there's 3, there's 2.
Do you think that one is like 90 feet? I mean, last year they were saying how high, and people asked how high is that?
Yeah, that's a good point. And although the number of cones often changes, I've noticed a pattern in our data because when we fly the drone or if we're doing helicopter flights, a lot of the goal of that is to make a 3-dimensional model of the crater floor with some of our photo processing. Almost consistently, regardless of how many cones there are, the highest one is almost always around 65 feet tall. So 65 feet, about 20 meters tall is where it usually comes out to. Yeah.
Now, do you ever go down and get samples of the lava?
It has not been done yet, but
That can be informative, right? In certain
yes, and the observatory is working on a safety plan to potentially go do that. It's going to become a lot easier once we start flowing onto the eastern side of the crater floor because we have well-established safety plans for getting in and out of that area. But landing on the crater floor, the crusted over lava surface is obviously a little bit more of a safety concern because of the gases down there. So
well, yeah, we see these things on National Geographic with the guys with their suits and their everything, and they drop them down, and they get the sample, and they just interesting.
And that's really important to get those samples because when we can take the lava and use it for geochemical analysis and learn a lot about the processes going on in the magma chamber, depending on what minerals, what certain polymers and things are in the lava. It's very informative to us in terms of understanding the processes to get those samples. Yep, Jessica.
My question is for Ho'ola'i. When Pele's sister Namaka was in pursuit, what elemental form did she take?
Yes, so the Maka's elemental form is ocean water. So, but pre-2018, you would have seen lava flowing down into the water, and that collision, right, that impact of this really hot lava engaging with the ocean, right, that change in temperature, that's what it's talking about in that story, right? The Maka, the ocean, and Pele clashing, causing all this new creation to, you know, to take place.
So when the water was down there, was there a new Hawaiian story told about that? Like
Sort of. That akua, that's the term for the class of these types of characters in our stories, right? These ancestors, and that is Hi'iaka, right? So Hi'iaka is a bunch of different Hi'iakas, but one of them is a freshwater entity. So when there was the lake, and I thought about this when he was describing having that lake and then an explosive eruption because of it. Well, that kind of mirrors some of our stories where Hi'iaka and Pele do duke it out and have a very massive eruption and battle themselves. Cool.
So what do you think she's going to do for the anniversary?
I don't know.
She's pretty fiery.
Pretty fiery. She might put on a show. She might also surprise us and go to bed early. I don't know.
Doesn't sound like her.
You have to do a sacrifice first.
Let's get into the weeds, my friend.
Now we heard a different version from a different ranger that there were like that
Inner
she shot
family.
her sister in flagrante, basically. Is that not the correct version?
Like
engaged with her husband.
Okay. Yes. So thank you. Sorry. Is that Spanish?
It's Latin.
Got it. Okay. Anyways, sort of, right? So in the story where Pele and Hi'iaka have a big battle, it actually comes at the tail end of a love story between Pele and this man named Lohiau, who's this. You guys know who Jason Momoa is?
Yeah.
Alright, so basically picture Jason Momoa dancing around in Kauai. Pele sees him in a dream. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to marry him. Right, so she then goes through this whole process, and they engage within Pole, which is this other realm that people are able to engage into. But she sends Hi'iaka to get her, or to get him, right, Lohiau. And she tells Hi'iaka, like, listen, I'm giving you this time frame, okay? If you don't make it back in this time, I'm assuming that you're fooling around with him, and I'm gonna destroy your grove and forest. So Hi'iaka's like, oh, okay. Well, she gets there, and Lohiau actually, in some stories, committed suicide, in other stories, like, paralyzed himself from the waist down so he couldn't walk. So she's like, oh, great, I'm on a time crunch. Now I gotta heal you. So she uses some of her abilities and basically heals Lohiau. She then brings Lohiau over. But when you engage with someone like that, right, if you ever take time to care for somebody, you kind of develop these feelings, right, of aloha, right, to the person. So the time continues, right, and they are, I want to say maybe a day past the allotted time that Pele is like, you need to be back. And Pele is like, yeah, all right, sis, you're late, and just destroys Hi'iaka's home and grove. Hi'iaka comes back with Lohiau, and as sisters do when they have poor communication, they get into it, and they have a whole big battle. And in the story, it's described as Hi'iaka crawling down into the very heart of Halemaʻumaʻu to try and extinguish the heat and fire that is her sister. So is that, I think that might have been the one. Okay. There's a lot of stories about Pele. She's a favorite of yeah.
So are these more stories of like awe, or are they supposed to be like, you know, obviously telling the story of how the lake came about, but like as a kid, like that would be like scary. Like that would be kind of scary, right?
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. So, Kanaka are very, very interesting people, and our stories, as you get older, you grow up with them, right? And as you get older, you're able to peel back these layers, and in Hawaiian we have a thing called kauna, right, which is the deeper hidden poetic meaning of something, right? So within that story that I had mentioned earlier with the voyage, right, when you start peeling back those layers, right, we start seeing references of geologic or volcanic activity via the Hawaiian hotspot, right, moving from island to island, causing things to start to grow. As we start looking at the interpersonal connections that we see between the characters, we can see it within our own lives and kind of see maybe we shouldn't burn down our sister's home on accident, or maybe we shouldn't try to kill our sister because of X, Y, and Z, you know, or just be jealous from the beginning and recognize that, like, hey, families are families and love goes all around, but you know, the little ones need a little extra time. So the stories start off in a way that stick to us as kamali'i, as children, and as we get older and mature, that's when we start peeling back the layers and be like, huh, alright, that's cool, I didn't know I knew that. And then turns out we kind of know it. Yeah.
So what is the responsible for the differences in density that you were talking about earlier?
So, for example, like that material that makes up the islands, like from that interaction of the lava from the first eruption and the water lake, it's so fragmented that there's a lot of like void space in it, and therefore it's just naturally less dense. But also, it's notable that like as lava works its way across the surface of that active lava lake down there, gas is coming off of it, and that gas leaving it makes it less dense, and that's why once it rafts across that active lava lake, it dips down and fills in under the crust that we see here on the east side, for example. And it's able to do that because it's lost that gas, and it's made itself more dense and able to drop it in deeper parts of the lake down there.
Gravel over here. When did that happen?
Oh. I think a lot of this stuff that we're standing on is from the 1780 eruption. Some of the larger blocks might be from 1924, but I think most of this is 1790 here. Yeah.
Thank you.
What is this structure for?
So that is a triangulation station, and when Westerners first came here and tried to map the caldera, they would essentially set up a theodolite, which is a very precise surveying instrument, on top of this and shoot angles to various features in the crater and then do the same from a different spot. And based on the vectors, they could get very precise distances, and that was how they made the first topographic maps of this area back in like the late 1800s and early 1900s.
Could they measure the depth? How deep it is?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I wish I was more of an expert on it, but we have GPS now, so I don't have to do that stuff to measure it. Yeah.
I believe this dates from 1912.
There we go. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the significance of this location to you personally?
Well, for me, this is actually where I got to see the eruption the first night that it happened. So a year ago, the eruption began. Rangers were like, okay, we got to make sure that we have people out there that can interpret what's going on, help keep people safe. So this was, well, this kind of general area, the overlook down there up to here. I'd really walk back and forth, and standing here and looking over, all I could think of is the stories that I grew up with, right? Of Pele Honua Man, all these different elemental forms and elemental processes that are happening. So this is really what it's talking about.
I didn't think about this until literally the second that you asked that question, but this spot. So I didn't give my full backstory. That I'm from the mainland, if you couldn't tell from my accent. And I came out here to be a volunteer at the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory in 2015, and I was kind of interested in trying to stay on the island, and I eventually landed myself a full-time job that was going to enable me to stay. And it was actually this spot that I walked up the trail to while I was on the phone with my mom, telling her, yeah, I'm actually going to move here. And She was really going to go like 5,000 miles away, and then a few months later they came to visit, and they were like, "Okay, now we know why you're staying." So yeah, I guess this spot does have some special significance for me. Yeah.
Where are you from?
New Jersey. Yeah.
Where?
It's like 164, Bergen County, north end of the state.
Wow, this is getting really intense. So, is there a way to see Pele? I don't know if that's pronouncing it right.
So we have a term called a Kīlauea, right? And a Kīlauea is a physical form that a kua can take, right? That class of character. So some, but not all, of her forms are, and she got a lot. The lava itself, right? The gas that we see coming up from it, and as well as, and I don't know if we have any going on right now, but there are these white birds called Uēkahuna, and they are associated with Halemaʻumaʻu as a form. So maybe they'll come visit us. That these forms, right? They may not be like a physical form like you and I, but they are something that's tangible, right? That reminds us that, like, oh wow, hey, Pele.
So what about? It seems like she's often has anyone seen her as a woman, or is there a story about that?
In our stories, it does mention her looking as a woman. The ones where it starts getting into Madame Pele, that's a different thing. But Pele Honuamea, right? Instead of just her physical appearance, it's also her nature, right? That her, we call it ano, right? Her being, like who she is. We all have ano, we all have lavena, right? How we hold ourselves, is very wahine, right? And I don't want to say feminine, because, right, the cultural constructs of those two things are different across different cultures, right? And wahine are typically very strong, very outspoken people that are also full of love, that help create opportunities for people, but also cut your line when you're getting a little ahead of yourself, you know? So it's in those aspects of that people, oh yeah, wahine, you know?
Maybe we'll wrap up the formal portion of the Q&A, but we'll probably be lingering around here a little bit more if you want to ask any questions. And just a big cheer because no helicopters came over the entire time. I don't know. We got to be locked out. Yeah.
All right, but yeah, come on, guys, come check it out.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you so much.
Here's your storytelling. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you in person.
All right, everyone. That was the main presentation there. And now we will be going over to Two Pineapples. They will be going live, or they'll be going live momentarily, publicly listed, and we will pass you guys over to them. Be able to get some live lava viewing on the edge of the caldera from a slightly different view than they normally do. Cool that we were able to get this whole thing to work. Sorry for the bad signal over there. There's nothing we can do about that. Trying our best to make all this happen. We appreciate Two Pineapples for, making all this possible, with Philip there as well. And again, USGS, definitely thank them, and the National Park Service, Mike Zauler, and Ho'ola'i. I believe that's his name. All right.
Cameras where you catch a couple more angles. Turn the mic around so that you get a looking at it from, but we'll keep rolling.
Cool.
So give us 2 minutes and enjoy the view.
I have another one.
All right. So yeah, they'll be up in a couple minutes. Yeah, definitely thanks to USGS and the Park Service. All right, appreciate everybody. We are going to drop the link in to chat, and people can begin making their way over there. We'll be cutting this live stream off momentarily. Let me get it on Facebook as well. One second, just trying to get the spam in the chat going. Get everybody going over to Two Pineapples on YouTube. That is where the stream is continuing at. We thank everybody for tuning in today to watch the year of review of the 2021-2022 Kilauea eruption inside Halemaʻumaʻu. And they just went public, so awesome. Let's pass it over to them, and we'll be able to continue the conversation in their chat. Thank everybody for joining us. Our plan, hopefully tomorrow, Philip will be able to put out a video update of his own and be able to discuss Kilauea and the recent changes that have been going on the volcanoes on our island. So if you want more information, I know this is our normal time for our update, and we didn't do that today. Instead, we had this special presentation from USGS and the National Park Service. Awesome to be able to provide that for you. And yeah, so tomorrow, be on the lookout for a little short video update on the two volcanoes.